Hello, my name is Rosanna Kurer from the Digital Leadership Institute. Welcome to this Coding for Young People webinar on how to code your first smartphone app in Android. We will be using the MIT App Inventor platform, which is a perfect platform for learning how to code. It is made for beginners, and it is also a wonderful platform to use to teach coding. This will be a train the trainer webinar. I expect the participants to have the intention of teaching coding, even if they are not coding experts. We will begin from the very beginning. No previous experience in coding is required, and we will be doing everything step by step. And I will be giving you tips on how to teach coding to absolute beginners. So let's get started. I'd like to start with a short history of the App Inventor platform. The App Inventor was developed by an MIT professor by the name of Hal Abelson. He developed it in 2009 as he took a whole year sabbatical from MIT. He spent that whole year at Google, and together with Google engineers, built and developed the App Inventor platform. His goal was to build a tool for everybody to learn the basics of programming. It is a visual programming language that allows you to drag and drop commands and to be able to visually to have a visual presentation of your program. So it is a perfect way to learn coding, even for non-technical people. So the MIT App Inventor team have the mission of democratizing software development. They would like to see a lot of a great variety and diversity of people learning to program and learning to build smartphone apps. And they believe that this would empower people to do all sorts of things, especially young people, maybe to go in entrepreneurship, or maybe to go into engineering studies, or to go into setting up their own digital or tech startups. So this is the main mission of the App Inventor platform. So I think it's a perfect tool to use to learn and to teach the basics of coding and computational thinking. Before you start organizing the details of your workshop or the details of your tutorial, it is best to define the scope of your goals. What will your goals be as a trainer? So I have here a list of 4 goals that are very realistic for a 1 to 2 hour workshop for beginners. The first would be to introduce the App Inventor user interface. So there are 2 editors, the designer editor and the blocks editor. The second would be to guide the participants through basic tutorials so that they understand the basics of block programming. You will see this later during our tutorial. Also, one of the goals of your workshop should be to point out resources available online for them to be able to build more apps even after your workshop, and also to explore the different block components, the different programs, and the different kinds of apps they could build with the MIT App Inventor platform. Also, part of your goal should be to, or could be, to introduce the concept of pair programming, especially if you're working with a big group. and you have limited resources in terms of laptops and computers, you could have two people working on one laptop, and that would be called pair programming. So this will encourage them to collaborate in solving their problems, and will also make your job as a trainer easier if they first ask each other and try to solve their problems before going on to you to ask for guidance and for help. So these are four realistic goals that you can set for yourself as a trainer. Another thing that should be clear before you start working on your tutorial or your workshop is know what are the learning objectives. What do you want your participants to learn or your students to learn during your workshop? So again, since it's a beginner course, you should start with realistic objectives. And I have here again a list of four realistic objectives, and I think you should always be aware of them as you are designing the details of your workshop or your tutorial. So they should be able to effectively use the interface. So the designer editor and the blocks editor. They should appreciate the concept of blocks programming. So it's really very easy, a um, drag and drop method for building your software. And also they should understand, especially if you're teaching teachers, they should understand the potential of the App Inventor platform in teaching computer science principles and computational thinking. So this is really very important. Another goal would be to help them appreciate the advantages of pair programming and collaboration so that they could also use this in the classroom. Now, as a trainer, you will have, or a teacher, you will have to stress that other teachers and other trainers should be ready for a mindset change. Teaching coding does not require you to be a software engineer, or it doesn't require you to be an expert in coding or a professional programmer. There are so many tools out there that evolve so quickly that it is really very difficult to stay in a profession such as software engineering or software programming without have to be constantly learning new tools and new developments. And as a teacher, you should make this clear to your students. And for this reason, when I say mindset change, is that the change will be teachers were previously perceived as the source of knowledge. Now, when you teach coding, you have to make clear, and it should be clear to yourself as well, that you are not the source of all knowledge, but you are a facilitator for learning. You're not required to know all the answers to all the questions, but you will have to know how to tackle problems, where to look for resources, and how to do Google searches to answer the questions your students might have. And it will be useful if you teach them these methods of searching for answers and solving problems. Before the day of the workshop or before the day of your class, there are some pre-workshop preparation procedures that are very important to the success of your training or workshop. So I have made a list of 5 points here. The first thing you have to do is you have to inform your participants that they will need a Gmail account. In order to use the MIT App Inventor, you need to register with a Gmail account. If they don't have one, you can ask them to create one just for the workshop. And it doesn't have to be the email that they use on a regular basis. The next most important thing actually is to make sure there's a good Wi-Fi connection on site. And it is absolutely imperative that you test the connection before the workshop. You should bring your laptop and your Android mobile device on site, and you should test uh, the App Inventor site, which is a web application. So you will just need Chrome. It works best on Google Chrome. It will also work on Firefox. So those are the two web browsers that you will need. And your mobile device, you will need to download the free app from the Google Play Store. It's called the MIT App Inventor 2 Companion. Now you have to test these two things on site with the Wi-Fi connection. Most problems occur when the Wi-Fi is not there's too much security measures on the Wi-Fi, so that it will be difficult for the laptop and your mobile device to communicate with each other. In that case, you might want to use a mobile phone hotspot instead of a Wi-Fi connection. That works too. Okay, so you have to test this if it all works. The reason you need an Android, the App Inventor companion app on your Android device is because you will be live testing the apps as you develop them step by step. You can check each step on your laptop, and you will see how your app grows from having one button to two buttons to three buttons, to have interactivity, to have a video on it, to access the web. All this you do step by step, and each step you can check how your app looks on your mobile device using the App Inventor 2 Companion. And the last two is prepare a slide deck and print out the handouts. So if you want to have the blocks that you need to create the app that you will be creating during the workshop, then you could also just print out the handouts and give out the handouts to the students. Although this is not necessary, you could also have a slide deck and just show them the procedure, and they can follow step by step. And this is optional. You can prepare feedback forms so that you know how to improve your workshop for the next group of people. Okay, so I've prepared here a lesson plan for a 60 to 90-minute workshop. It really depends on your students or the participants. You will notice that some students or some participants will be faster in learning how to code than others. So I guess that's a normal thing. So if you would like to take it slow, then you could stretch this lesson plan to cover 90 minutes or even 2 hours if you foresee a pause in between, a 15-minute pause in between. And if you really want to do it step by step and guide your students with a lot of time. Okay, so this is like my suggested lesson plan. The first 15 minutes, which could stretch to 20 minutes if there are questions, is that you answer the question, what is App Inventor? So I've provided here links to resources that could answer this question. The App Inventor website, of course, appinventor.mit.edu. It's also the time to introduce your participants to block programming, so you can show them the interface. There are two editors, the design editor and the blocks editor, and you will see that in the coming minutes, I'm going to be doing a tutorial on building a translated app. And there is also you can introduce the concept of pair programming, which is there is a link in on Wikipedia on the benefits of pair programming. So that's for the first 15 minutes. The next 20 minutes, you could do a very easy tutorial. It's called a Talk to Me tutorial, which you will find on the App Inventor website. And you will also be introduced to event-driven programming, which means that um, the app does something when it is triggered by some action of the user. For example, clicking a button or swiping or um, drawing or touching the interface or the canvas. So these are things that you could do for 20 minutes. This Talk to Me tutorial is a really easy app to build. So it's perfect for beginners, and they can already try out the blocks editor and the designer editor and get used to the interface. So the interface is like what you see on your computer with all the drop down menus and all the buttons and things that you as a user of MIT App Inventor will be seeing on your screen. Now you could add an additional feature to the Talk to Me app. So I invite you to, and I encourage you to go to the App Inventor website and try out this tutorial. Now today, right after I explain a lesson plan, we're going to do a tutorial which is somewhere not really advanced, but it won't be the first step. We are going to do the translated app, which is an app that translates audio input into another language, meaning the user just has to say something in a specific language, and then it will get translated to the language specified, and it will also be read out. So it's going to be a very interesting app to build. So let's get started with a tutorial for the translated app. Okay, let's get started and build our translation app. The first thing you have to do is open your web browser, preferably Chrome or Firefox. So these two are the are the browsers that I recommend. I'm using Chrome here, and I go ahead. You can go ahead and type in appinventor.mit.edu, and it will take you to this website. Now you will need a Gmail account in order to use this web application, this App Inventor web application. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Create Apps here on the top right hand corner. It says Create Apps. I'll click on that. And as I have already registered previously, it might not ask me to enter my Gmail account. So you see here I go straight to the App Inventor tool. You might have, if it's your first time, you might have to register your Gmail account, and then you will get to this window after you have entered your Gmail address. So I'm just going to go here. It says welcome to MIT, and it's this version. And now I'm going to just click on continue. This is a previous app that I worked on. This now is the designer block. So you can see here there are two buttons here. One says designer and one says blocks. The designer block is where you design your interface, and an interface is what your user sees in your app. So it's the buttons, it's images, it's the text, everything that your user will see is in the interface. So this is the the designer editor, and here you can see all the different elements that you can add to your interface. These are the properties of the elements, the properties of the buttons, and here are all the elements or components summarized in a list. Now, if I click on the blocks editor, then you see these are the blocks. So this is the code. This is our code. Now I'll go back here to the designer. Now, first thing you have to do is go over to projects and click on start new project. And I'm just going to call my app right now as translate it app. So here you can see I used the camelback. It's like you have the first letters are capitalized of each new word. Translated app, and that's my project name, and I will just click on OK. And it will take me to a blank screen. Okay, so I'm here back in my slides, and it says here step 1, set up the user interface in the designer editor. So you have these arrows showing the different important parts of the App Inventor user interface. You have on your left hand side all the buttons and the images and the labels that you can drag to your interface. You have the non-visible components in the lower part, and you have on the right hand side the properties of each component. And in the middle you have the image of the screen and how it's going to look to your user. So now I'm going to go ahead and go back to Google Chrome, and so this is now I'm back in Google Chrome, and I'm gonna drag first off a button. So this is the first user interface that I will drag. So I have a button. I will also need a label. Let's see, label, so that we can see. So as you can see, as I'm dragging here these components, you can see here in screen 1 I have one button and one label, and this is the properties of the label, and this is if I click on button here, and then I have the properties of the button. So first off, I'm going to rename my button, and I'm going to call it the help button, using again the camel case. So I have the first letter of each word capitalized, so this makes it easier for me to understand what this button for. So it's a help button. The label, I'm going to rename it translate label. So that's the label, or translated label. So it's after it's been translated, it's going to appear here. So I'm just going to go and click OK. So I have here help button, translated label. The help button I am going to put here on the right hand side with the properties. If you go down, you'll see text, and I'm going to change the text to help. So if I click on return, then you can see it's help. This is the text for label 1. I could take this actually out, and you won't see anything, although it is there. So the label is somewhere here. You can see this green box. Other things we will need are a list picker. A list picker is like a button. It is like a button. So I'm going to put here where you have a list where you can choose a button that when you click on this button, then you will come up, then the window will pop up with a choice of several languages that you could translate into. So we're going to translate from English into several other languages. So if you can see here, the list picker is here. I'm going to rename this to language list picker, and I'm just going to say okay. So this is where I'm going to choose the language, and you can put here elements from string. So I'm going to put here, for example, NL for Dutch, ES for Spanish, IT for Italian, FR for French, and what's another language that we could translate into DE for German. Okay, so these are the elements that when you click on the list picker, it will automatically come up with all these choices. Okay, so that's what I have. Now I need, so the help button is there so that if I have any questions, I can click on it and a window is going to pop up with some answers. The text label will show the, well, let's do it this way. Let's put the help button here. Okay, and the label is okay there. Okay, this will just allow the user to click on it and get answers if they're lost and don't know how to use the app. Okay, another thing that, a lot of other things that we will need is a speech recognizer. So a speech recognizer, I'm just gonna grab it here and click, and so you see it's a non-visible component. That means you can't see it on the user interface, you can't see it in your app, but it's somewhere within the app. If you click on this or hover over it and click on the question mark, it says here, gives you information on the component. So component for using voice recognition to convert from speech to text. This will allow you to say something in English or whatever language, but in this case for the app we're doing English, and we're going to convert it to whatever language that we choose from the list picker here. And if you want, you can click on more information here, and it takes you to the App Inventor website with all the information about the speech recognizer component. Okay, so I'm going to go back. I'm going to close this window and I'm going to go back. Next, so we will get speech to text, and then that text will be translated by this tool called the Yandex Translate. It works very much like Google Translate, but it's just from a different company. So Yandex Translate, it's a non-visible component. And then I'm going to go over and get text to speech. So this is like how it's going to happen. The speech recognizer will get the audio data of your speech and convert it into a textual data, feed it into Yandex Translate, and Yandex Translate will give us the translation in whatever language that we had picked here in the list picker. And then it will get, the Yandex Translate will give us a translation in the language we want in text form. And from then this text will be taken by this component, text to speech, and we'll convert the text into an audio data. So if I click here, component for using text to speech to speak a message. So it's going to convert from text to audio, and then you're going to hear what it is that you have said in English into the language that you have chosen here in the list picker. Now I'm going to rename the list picker to choose. I'm not going to choose, sorry. I'm going to cancel this. I'm not renaming it. I'm just going to change here the text. So I've chosen here. This is highlighted. So I have all the properties for the list picker here on the right hand side. And under text, I'm going to type in choose language. And you see here it changes, choose a language. So that's a button. Okay, at this point, having done what we've done already, like setting up the user interface and the user interface for our app, you could actually grab your mobile device, your Android phone or your Android tablet, and download, or I hope you've downloaded it before you started this tutorial, the App Inventor companion app from the Google Play Store into your mobile device. So please do it, and then we can continue, and you can already try to test your app even if it doesn't have any code in it yet. You will be able to see your user interface, the interface of your app, um, once you have your companion app on your mobile device. Okay, so this is our user interface. Now I forgot one more thing, which is a notifier. So I'm going to go back here. In my palette, I have different drawers. This is the media drawer with all the components such as text to speech, video player, and Yandex Translate. Now I go to my user interface palette, and here I need a notifier. So I'm going to go ahead and drag a notifier. And so it's a non-visible component. So what is a notifier? Notifier is a component that displays alert dialogues, messages, and temporary alerts. So this is what I'm going to use for when I click on the help button, that a dialog pops up with some help for the user, just in case they need it. So now I have all my components. At this point, I could already go to connect and click on AI Companion, and I will get this this barcode. And with my App Inventor App Companion on my mobile device, which I've downloaded from Google Play Store into my smartphone, I can scan this QR code, and it will automatically, after scanning the QR code with the App Companion, the MIT App Inventor companion app, then I would right away come to this user interface on my mobile device, and you can already see what your app looks like. So that way you could test each step of your app development phase. So each phase you can quickly test, live test on your phone with a mobile app using the MIT App Inventor companion app. And by clicking on connect here, AI companion, and scanning this barcode with the app companion, the companion app, the MIT App Inventor companion app, so that you could see your app on your mobile device. For that, you need to have your laptop or your desktop and your mobile device connected to the same Wi-Fi system. Okay, on my slides, I put here step 3, enable speech recognizer. So this is after having specified the language in your list picker component, we move on to step 3. That is, we go to the blocks editor, and then we give each of these components, like the button, the label, and the list picker, we will give them a behavior. Meaning, at this point, even if you click on the button on your mobile device, nothing happens because we haven't given it a behavior yet. And the behavior is basically the code that we will be adding in the blocks editor. So I'm going to go over to my App Inventor, to App Inventor in Chrome. And so here you see I'm in designer block. Now I'll go over. So here are my components, this button, the list picker, the help button, and the label is somewhere there. And all the non-visible components. Now that's my designer editor. Now I'm going to go to my blocks editor. And here there's no code at all. But you can see here the built-in commands, built-in blocks. And here you can see screen 1 and all the components that I have added. The label, the list picker, the help button. Now in this case, because we renamed all the components, it's so easy for us to know what this button will be for. So the first thing we do is to create a variable for a language that we pick. So I'm going to say, so going here in the built-in blocks, clicking on here and taking this initialize global name to something. So the name of the variable I'm going to change to language, because this is the language we will choose to translate into from English. Now I'm just going to get a blank space, and I will get that from this text block, the very first block. So you see it clicks into place. That means that it's a good connection, that you can connect these two blocks. So now I've just said language is equal to 0 or to a space. It has no value. Next thing we do is to get the list picker to choose a language. So I'm going to enable the list picker when, and it's the first block here. So this is, again, I took it from hovering over the language list picker and clicking on it, and then I get all these blocks of code that we can do with this list picker. You can see it goes on and on. But we need the first block, which is when language list picker dot after picking do this. So after having picked one of the language in your list picker, what should it do? So that is what we're going to do now. I'm going to go over and see. I will go over here, go to the variable, and then I will set the variable of language. Okay, so here, there's a triangle here I click on, and I only have one variable. So I'm going to set the global language to the language that we picked, which I will go over to a block on the language list picker. And I will go over here. Here, selection. Language list picker dot selection. So that means the global language that we want to translate into will be the language that we have selected in our list picker. Okay, now the next step would be, so now I have the language. Now I'm going to go over to the speech recognizer and call speech recognizer to get the text. So at this point, our user is going to click, the first thing you do is you're going to click on, I'm going to go back to my designer editor. Let me see. Designer editor. The first thing that the user will do is he's going to click, he or she's going to click on choose a language, and then you will get a screen with all the languages that are available, which are actually NLES, ITFR, and DE. So, and then you can choose, for example, FR or I2, if IT, if you want to translate from English into French or Italian. So that you will get a list. And after picking the language, let's say you pick IT, which is Italian, the language here will be equal to IT. So it knows that you want to translate into language, and it's here. So set the global language to the selected language. And then it will activate your speech recognizer. At this point, it means you can speak into the speaker of your mobile phone and speak in English, and it will translate it into Italian. Step 4 is to use the Yandex Translate to translate the text which is taken out of the speech recognizer. So the speech recognizer takes your speech and converts it to text. And the result of that will be used in Yandex Translate to translate from English to whatever language you had chosen. Okay, so that's my slide. Now I'm going to go over to my App Inventor window. And so I have here, so this is my App Inventor. So this was the designer block. Here on the right, top right hand side, you can toggle from designer to blocks editor. So this is my designer editor. You have all the components here, the visible and the non-visible. And now I go over to my blocks, and these blocks we have already done. Now the third block will be going to speech recognizer. So I click on speech recognizer and I get all the blocks here. I take the first block. So I drag it into the screen. When speech recognizer dot, after getting text, result. So the result here is the text which is taken out of your speech by the speech recognizer component. Now that result will be put into Yandex Translate. So I'm going to go over here to Yandex Translate, and I'm going to say call Yandex Translate. So again, I went over here to Yandex Translate, clicked on it, and took the middle block, which you can put into here, and it should click. So when you have a text, you want it to be translated. So that's what this block is all about. So language to translate to, it has to show the origin, the original language, and the language that you desire. So I'm going to go over to text here, the built-in text blocks. I'm going to choose the join block. So I'm going to join this, and in the first block, I'm going to say EN. So I'm going to go back to my text block, and I'm going to get a blank text, and I'm going to put EN because that's the original language. And it will translate into this one, the global language, which I picked in my list picker. So I'm going to go and choose this variable called language, which is holding the information of the selected language that I had done. So I'm going to go over to variable, and I'm going to go get, and I'm going to choose the global language. So this means I'm language to translate to, from English to whatever it is that I chose here. And text to translate will be the result here. So I'm just going to get the result. So here it's just going to translate the whole language that you speak into your phone from English into the language that you have chosen. Okay, step 5 is using the text-to-speech component. At this point, your Yandex Translate from the previous block has already translated the text from the speech recognizer component, from the input of the speech recognizer component. So now you have a textual translation of your audio input. So what do you do with that? Now you get the block Yandex Translate got translation, as you see here, and you enable your text to speech. So the text to speech takes the translation, which is in textual form, and transforms it into an audio output, which is just reading out the text in the language that you've translated it into. So this is what this block is all about. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to Chrome. And so here I have 3 blocks. My 4th block will be on the Yandex Translate. So I click on Yandex Translate on the left-hand side, where I have all the blocks here. And I pick out the first block and drag it into the screen. When Yandex Translate got translation, so it's been translated, first of all is I'm going to get the text to speech. I will set the language of the text to speech component. It's going to be in the language that I have chosen here to be translated. So from the list picker, the very beginning, I chose a language to translate my English sentence into. So I'm here, I can say I've said it should be English into the language I've chosen. So I'm going to go to variable, which holds that information, get that variable called language. And in that variable, I have the information of what I had chosen here, the list picker. So text to speech dot language to get the global language. And another thing I would like to do here is, here I have a translated label. So I want to see it on the screen. And the screen, it will be shown using this label, which I dragged onto my screen. So I'm going to go ahead and get a translated label. Set translated label text to, and the text should be the translation here. So I'm just going to get the translation which Yandex translated. So I'm just going to get this translation. So the label that I have here, now I'm going to go to the designer block. I have a label here, somewhere there, which has no text. So I'll say here, maybe I'll put a translation, just so we see it. So there it is. So the translation here. So whatever we translate into Italian or Spanish, that translation will appear on this label. That's what, I go back to the blocks editor. That's what this label is all about, this block. Set translated label, the text of the translated label to get the translation from the Yandex translation. Okay, now we go and get text to speech. Call your text to speech. So I got it from the text to speech block on the left hand side. Click on it and get the purple block, which is called text to speech dot speak. And they will speak out the message, which is your translation over here. And there, so you have your translation app finished. We still have one thing to do, which is your help button. So I'm going to go overhead and here click when the help button dot click do, and then I'm just going to go over here. So this is our last block. I'm going to go over to notifier, and I'm just going to go over and show message dialog here. Call notifier.show message dialog. This will be the message, this will be the title of the message, and this will be the button text. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick here the title, which is, I'm going to put here about the translate app. Translate it app. Okay, and I'm just going to go ahead and get another, maybe a join. So I'll have two sentences here in the message itself. And I'm going to click and get another of this. And I'm going to copy that block, Command Control, Command V, or Control C and Control V on your Windows. And I'm going to say here, this translate it app translates your speech input in English. I'm going to continue it here into, I think I said Spanish, Italian, French, and German. So I think that was those were the language. Now the button text will just be OK. So if they click on OK on the window, then this notifier window will disappear. Okay, so this is how our app is coded. So that's the whole program of our app. Now, maybe the next step is I can show it to you and demonstrate the finished app. I'll try to show it in my mobile device. Okay. Okay, so I have tested my app and there was an error message and it just wouldn't work. And I tried changing my Wi-Fi connections to see if there was a firewall that was blocking my app or blocking my connection to Yandex Translate. And in the end, I went through all my code and I discovered a syntax error. And it's here. If you can see here, EN, meaning that's the original language, to be translated to the language that you have selected here. And there is a dash or a hyphen missing here. So in the syntax, to use Yandex Translate, they need the code for English with this EN or the original language, and then a hyphen or a dash, and then the next language, which would be whatever you pick. FR for French, DE for German, IT for Italian, and so forth. Now I've made the correction here. I put EN dash or EN hyphen. And now I'd like to see how it goes. And I'm going to test it. In order to test the app, you have to go here on your web browser, on your MIT App Inventor site with your code, or you could also be in your designer block, it doesn't matter. Just go over to Connect and AI Companion. This will connect your code, which you have built here on the MIT App Inventor website. This will connect to the companion app on your mobile device so you can test your app. So I'm going to click on AI Companion and I have this barcode and I am going to enable or start up my companion app on my Nexus device, and I am going to scan the barcode in order to see the app on my phone, on my smartphone. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. So here is my smartphone, my mobile device, and here is the App Inventor companion app. I'm going to click on it and I get this. Okay, now I get this interface. Now I'm going to click on scan QR code. And so with this, I can scan the code which is on my App Inventor site. So I'm going to do that right now. And so there I have scanned it. And it should appear very soon. There you go. There's my app. Translation, choose a language. I'm going to click on choose a language. Choose a language. And I have the choices, NLES, IT, FR, and DE. I'm going to click on IT, so I get Italian. Okay, I'm going to try again. Hello. Ciao. Okay, so you heard, now I'm going to choose another language. Let's say ES. What's your name? ¿Cuál es tu nombre? Okay, so now you've seen that, and you also see it works. So the code is right and everything's okay. So I hope you understood everything, and I hope you have fun trying out this app. So you can see here the help button, the translate button, and above it the label that shows the Spanish sentence that was just read out. So it's a bit difficult with the camera, but I hope you can see a little bit. Okay, thank you so much for joining my webinar, and good luck, and I hope you have a nice day. Thank you. Bye.